goes undefeated, they have no competitor for the finals, so they split it in half. Remember Sam Harris, we went all the way through and practically, and they split it shortly thereafter. So they put me on the first show of season 1, and I went undefeated, and then waited while they filmed round 2, and I competed against Dee Belson.
Belson. Whatever happened to Dee?
I hear periodically from people that I know associated with her, so singing and doing okay.
Really? So, do you ever watch American Idol?
I do. I didn't watch so much the first season, but I have started TiVoing it because there are some great singers on there. I really enjoy hearing the singers. I think it's good because it's another way for young performers to be discovered, and for that reason it's great. We don't have a lot of talent competitions. I think it's terrible for the fact that it's a reality show in a way, and it exploits people to have the highest entertainment value. That I don't like. And they may think they're not damaging those young people, but I know they are. Because I was on Star Search where the judges were not allowed to talk. They just could write their number down. And I would see competitors up on the stage smiling when they lost, looking like I'm okay. And I'd be off stage, and the minute they got up past that camera, they burst out into tears. I mean, it's traumatic. Singing is personal. It's a physical part of you. So it's like having your person be insulted in a way.
Is there a difference then between the real audition process and what you see on these TV shows? Isn't there that same kind of, if you go and audition for a Broadway producer and then they're like, no, out of here, isn't that the same thing, or are these different?
In a Broadway audition, which I haven't done a lot of, if I had to audition much, I wouldn't get anything because I'm too nervous. I'm terrible, really, in auditions. But they really don't say anything. The hardest part of a Broadway audition is the time it takes to walk out of the room after you've finished in silence, because they don't say much to you. You get a vibe whether or not you're doing well. If you're what they're looking for, you could do well but not be what they're looking for. So, or you could do terribly. You don't ever know. But you have that moment where it seems like 5 miles to the door.
Yeah.
That's the hardest part. American Idol, they're allowed to spew, for entertainment's sake, whatever they want to say about these kids, and they do.
Yeah. Okay. We finish up with Star Search. We move on. Next thing, Frank Wildhorn, Jekyll and Hyde. How many, 12 years of your life put into that project?
Obviously, many more years for Frank, because he wrote that at USC. I became involved with Jekyll and Hyde in end of 1987. And we did our first production here, in Houston, at the Alley Theater in '90. And then it was just a series of different things leading up to Broadway. It was the workshop in New York. It was the double cast. First the highlights album before we ever did Houston, and then Houston, then the workshop, then the double album, and then the year-long tour before Broadway, then Broadway, and then the cast album. So, yeah, a lot of time, a lot of years.
What do you think was different for your process? I mean, granted, most Broadway shows don't have this kind of life till they get to the stage with, of course, the same cast even. What did you learn doing that, going through that? What do you think was the benefit of that kind of an experience for a show?
Well, my character, fortunately or unfortunately, didn't really change much. I was allowed to be sort of Linda Eder in that. I acted, I guess, a little bit, but not really. They created this role around me, so I was able to go up there and just really be myself and blast out these big songs. But I think what I learned in general is how important it is not to give up, because Frank never gave up. And if he had given up, I gave up years before the show ever hit Broadway. I would say, why don't we just quit? Why don't we just move on to the next idea, And he wouldn't, and he persevered and was ultimately successful because of it.
How soon after the first Concepts album came out did you realize this thing clicked, that people were buying it? I mean, I remember finding that CD back in Chicago long before I knew of the show. It was finding an audience.
I don't think I really did. I mean, I was so new to the whole record thing. I don't think I knew until Houston. And really none of us knew until that very first night of previews what the reaction we got. We didn't know. And then, of course, the night we opened, and then when the reviews came out, I'll never forget that night. I've never been reviewed really in that capacity before. As a singer, yes, but not for so-called acting.
Do you remember what it said?
Again, I was so nervous.
Do you remember what it said?
Well, it's interesting because I just spoke with Everett Evans, who interviewed me for that, and gave me my first great rave review, and I'll never forget it because we were sitting in a restaurant waiting, and I had a big plate of spaghetti in front of me. I was absolutely starving. I had probably not eaten that whole day. It was midnight or whatever, and the review came, and I just remember I never stopped eating. I don't even think I was aware that I was just inhaling this pasta as they were reading the review. and it was a great review, and it was quite the night.
If you had failed as an actress, would that have damaged what you were doing? Or because you think of yourself or thought of yourself as a singer, this was a side job?
Well, that show was so much about singing for me. It really was a sung-through musical. I didn't really consider myself an actress until I did Camille Claudel.
Really?
Yeah, that's a show we did, and we've only done the one production of it. It's a true story, and I don't know whether it will move on from that point ever. I don't know. But I worked for a year with a coach prior to that, and that's a book musical. You could remove the songs and still have a play.
Right.
And it's a real woman with an incredibly dramatic life, an incredible love story, highs and lows like you can't believe. And I think I really believe I did a good job. I worked really hard, and I felt great in the part. That's when I knew that I could act. It wasn't in Jekyll. I didn't know in Jekyll if I could act or not.
Even walking out on Broadway on the first time?
No, I just remember opening night of Broadway, I cried at the curtain call because it had taken so long to get there. I was like, so relieved. Thank God, we're finally here.
Yeah. Okay, when you perform and you're singing with symphonies, when you're singing in concert, what discipline is different in that than acting? You talk about taking a year to hone that craft, but aren't you presenting a song in some way the same way as an actor acts?
Yes, as far as working with symphony, it's a concert, and at first I was very much intimidated by symphonies because it's a symphony. There's an element to them. It's very elegant, and there's a seriousness that I associated with it, which isn't ultimately true. They're people, and they're just as fun as anybody else. But I felt like I had to be very, like this, and that's not me. That's not the way I perform, and it took me a while to realize the show would go better if I just relaxed and was the Linda that I always am in my own concerts, which is free and say, do just about anything that hits me.
But the acting discipline, do you perform a song like an actor presents or no?
Certain songs definitely are 3-act plays, and in order to do them well, you have to act them. Although I've never had a problem acting within a song. That's not something anyone ever taught me, because I didn't study for acting or singing. It was automatically there. They were my real feelings from the very beginning. When I first started singing, I hardly moved my body. My emotion was still there in my face, and it was still in the song. And that just happened innately. That's not something anyone taught me. I'm not sure why. I think it's because I come from a very stoic Midwestern family, Scandinavian mother, very Ingmar Bergman. A lot of love there, but you didn't really show it.
Right.
And so for me, it was such an outlet to get on the stage and be allowed to show emotions. So they always were very real, whether I was singing a sad song or a happy song. It was always easy for me to connect to that real emotion.
Do you have to personally connect with a song to sing it, or could someone just say, here, sing this, and you could give a stellar performance with it?
If it's my kind of song, meaning it's the right dress, it fits me, then it happens automatically. If it's a song that I can maybe pull off, but I really probably shouldn't be doing, then I have to work harder to just make it okay. Right. And that's become very apparent to me over the years. I have, everyone goes through stuff, and I've been through some stuff in the last few years that actually helped me relate more to lyrics. Everything you do in life you bring to your songs. When I had a child, that was a huge bump up in understanding the world in a different way. Going through some personal stuff is another way that suddenly the lyrics take on a whole other level of meaning.
Yeah. When you go back now after living through what you've gone on with, and you go back to the old songs, does something new come to those?
Oh yeah. Especially because so many of them were written for me by Frank. So there's no question that they sort of became our history in our life.
You and Frank were together, had done all of this work together, and now you're, as the album says, by myself. Right. Is that hard for you creatively? Were you out there now, in a sense, without a net? Or had you gotten strong enough that this wasn't hard for you?
Well, the interesting thing with Frank and I is that we both brought things to the table. And we both were sort of at the same place in our careers when we met. So there's never been any denying that we were both contributing, we both helped each other. He's not lazy when it comes to his job. He's 24/7 into that. I have a lot of interest, so I can be lazy. I can